You're watching Rootstv Nigeria. 43 nominees are currently being screened by the National Assembly, members of the National Assembly, and we have seen 14 returnees, 7 women, and of course 29 fresh faces. But our focus today is on the composition of the list. My guest today is Barrister MOC Eniola. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you very much.
What do you make out of the list?
Yeah, basically, a very popular African adage says, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are. From the list of the friends of Mr. President that he has chosen to feature in this ministerial list, we are not too impressed or not so excited, because if you look at some of these persons coming back again, some of these returnee ministers, we at the grassroots have not felt their impact. We've not felt the impact of the Minister of Transport, except the completed railway projects that they of course met on ground. Beyond that, nothing else. We've not felt the impact of aviation, Hidi, Serike or whatever, who has been at the helm of affairs for about 4 years or 3 years plus. You know, we've not felt the impact of someone like Babatunde Fashola. I remember when they were occupying Nigeria and leading all of them protests. Yeah. You know, someone like Babatunde Fashola was very vocal in that struggle. He was saying that he can, and every reasonable government can and should fix power within 6 months.
But some people say that Hadi Sirika, the former Minister of Aviation, who has been returned now, they perform well, and that's why you earned a return.
Yeah, but the challenge is we don't know the yardstick to measure their performance. We're at a loss of how their performances are being rated first class performances. If you say the Minister of Aviation has performed well, you just take a flight from Abuja to Lagos or from Lagos to Port Harcourt. Just take a flight and tell me if there's any improvement in our aviation system. You pay very high fees. The cost of the operation of that jet, what should be your passenger's fare, is around 5,000–6,000. Then charges and taxes are about 20-something thousand. You know, we don't feel the direct impact of whatever that assessment may be. You know, or you get to the airport and your flight, you have a flight for 10 a.m. and you're still in the airport by 11 p.m. How would you say that such a person has performed? So for those of us at the grassroots, we've not seen any positive impact of the first 4 years.
But looking at the returnees now, especially, I mean, Fashola, which you have mentioned, he held 3 portfolio. I think that's the yardstick people are using in measuring what he has achieved and the fact that he merited a return. Do you think in that line?
I felt that even the 3 portfolio of housing, power and works actually overworked him. It actually distracted him. These are 3 key sectors. You're talking about works. You know, you're talking about housing, the Ministry of Housing. I've not seen any housing project for the people. Maybe apart from the normal monies that's dished out for National Assembly officers or principal officers, I've not seen housing estates. I've not seen low-cost estates spring up. I've not seen civil servants being given those opportunities to own houses. I've not seen private people in the private sector having opportunity beyond renting eternally. So when you say one man sat over housing, power and works, I felt it's more like a distraction to him, because
do you think it would have been better if that was separated?
Yes, if you say, okay, you can fix power in 6 months, or take power, and we start the countdown. We want to see the result at the end of the day, you know. But this man sat down over 3, and there's really nothing to show for it.
Well, what about their integrity? The likes of Godswill Akpabio, EFCC have actually kept mum on his case. The likes of Festus Keyamo, Silva, and the rest of them. Does integrity count here?
Yeah, I think Mr. President has what we call a double character syndrome. When I talk about a double character syndrome, I talk about what your lips is saying being different from what your body language is. Every time we see the president on national TV, in international meetings and conferences, one thing is always on his lips. He's always talking about corruption, fighting corruption. In his words, fighting corruption, corruption, corruption. But by his body language, he's doing something different. Take, for instance, what happened in Kano, you know, where a governor was caught on tape receiving monies in his public capacity. That on its own should raise a red flag for investigation. Up until today, we've not had any word in that regard. Or you talk about Lai Mohammed, for instance, or you want to talk about Festus Keyamo, who were prosecuted Timi Pre-Sylvia a few years ago, Timi Pre-Sylvia forfeited 48 properties and a lot of money. Just some few years back, he received the monies back from the government, received his properties back. He's going to be in the same cabinet with the same man that prosecuted him. You know, so you see that the president is suffering from this double character syndrome. He's saying one thing on the one hand and doing another thing.
Don't you think the women folk will be disappointed at this point?
No, definitely. Mr. President, in the course of his campaign, promised the youths, promised the disabled, and promised women even representation in this government. But you see, one of the things that the Nigerian people have suffered the most is inability of the people, when they get into power, to follow up on their campaign promises. Just like they read from a piece of paper that they never wrote, and then they get into the office and begin to do something else. The youths don't have a representation, the disabled don't have a representation, and more importantly, the women are grossly underrepresented in this cabinet. And that is not a good signal when you're talking about carry along, because the women folk contribute at least 50% of the electorate. So if 50% voted you into office, there should, even if you don't give 50% appointments, there should be some commensurate percentage in the number of appointments you give.
Thank you, Barrister Emosi, for speaking with us.
Thank you, sir.
You're still watching Rootstv Nigeria, and that's a package. I am Itogimo Edet.